I want you to try and imagine, just for a second, what it's like to be a student in China. The pressure is just off the charts, and the days, they're absolutely relentless. Okay, let's just walk through a typical day. Your alarm goes off at 5:30 a.m. It's still dark out. You're up, you're grabbing whatever you can for breakfast, and you are out the door. There is literally no time to waste. By 7 a.m. sharp, you're not at your desk. You're outside, standing at attention for mandatory exercises. After that, it's 10 straight hours of classes: Chinese, English, math. And the name of the game is simple. You sit still, you speak only when you're called on, and you memorize everything. Finally, at 5:15 p.m., the school bell rings. The official day is over, but if you think you're going home to relax, you are sorely mistaken. This is really just an intermission, because the second half of your day is about to begin. That's right, private tutoring. You wolf down some dinner, and then you're right back in another classroom. You'll be there until 9, maybe 10, sometimes even 11 at night, just drilling the exact same subjects you spent the entire day on. And then, at last, you collapse into bed completely exhausted, just to wake up and do it all over again the next day, and the next, and the next. It's not just a schedule, it's a soul-crushing cycle. And here's the real kicker. In this scenario, you're only 12 years old. This whole marathon is designed for one thing: to get you into a good high school, which gets you into a good university, which gets you a good job, which even helps you find a good spouse. Your entire life is seen as this one long race. So, who was cashing in on this pressure cooker? A massive private tutoring industry valued at a staggering $120 billion. I mean, this market quadrupled in just 6 years. There were almost as many tutoring companies in China as there were actual schools. And then, bam, in 2021, with what was basically the stroke of a pen, the Chinese government just decimated the entire industry. 120,000 tutoring centers ordered to shut down. Tens of thousands of people laid off in an instant. So you have to ask, what goal could possibly be so important that it would justify destroying one of the country's biggest industries, especially during a youth unemployment crisis? Well, to understand this, we really have to unpack the why, because there are the official reasons the government gave, and then there's the much deeper, much more dangerous threat this whole industry represented. Okay, so officially, the government laid out its case pretty clearly. They framed the crackdown as a way to get back ideological control over what kids were learning, to ease the incredible stress on families, to maybe boost a dangerously low birth rate, and to stop what they called the disorderly expansion of capital. And look, the financial stress was no joke. The average city-dwelling family was spending about 12% of their entire income on tutoring. And in some parts of Shanghai, that number could shoot up to an unbelievable $80,000 before a kid even got to high school. It was a full-blown economic arms race. But all those reasons, ideology, social stress, birth rates, that was really only part of the story. The real danger, the one that truly forced the government's hand, was that the tutoring industry was threatening the very foundation of social harmony in China. And what is that foundation? It's the myth of meritocracy. See, in a country with such huge inequality, the belief that anyone from any background can succeed through pure hard work, well, that's the glue holding the whole thing together. And at the absolute heart of that belief is the Gaokao, China's legendary college entrance exam. It's seen as the ultimate equalizer, one single standardized test that decides your whole future. The thinking goes, as long as the Gaokao is fair, the system itself is fair. But here's the catch. The system isn't perfectly fair, not even close. And that's a fact the government works pretty hard to keep under wraps. Just look at the admission numbers for Tsinghua University, which is like China's MIT. It's stunning. More students get in from Beijing, with its 22 million people, than from 2 provinces with a combined population of 228 million people. And the tutoring companies? They started making this unfairness impossible to ignore. And this right here is basically the smoking gun. The tutoring companies got greedy. Their ads became incredibly aggressive. They started framing the sacred Gaokao not as a test of merit, but as a game you could hack with their special tricks. This ad is basically weaponized anxiety. It says, pay us or your child's competitor will, and your kid will be left in the dust. This kind of talk tarnished the exam's holy status and threatened to expose the whole system as rigged. So the government brought down the hammer to restore faith in the system. The big question is, did it work? Not even a little bit. In fact, it had the complete opposite effect. You see, the industry didn't just disappear. It went underground. Tutors started teaching in secret, in hotel rooms, private homes. They'd rebrand themselves as professional nannies who just happened to have advanced degrees. And to avoid getting caught, they ditched the big, affordable classes and switched to super expensive one-on-one sessions. And the result? The crackdown turned tutoring into a luxury good, something only the rich could afford. It dramatically widened the very inequality it was supposed to fix. And this is where the story stops being just about China and becomes universal. Because this pattern, where a reform that sounds good on paper ends up making the problem even worse, it happens everywhere. You could call it inequality disguised as equality. For instance, think about an earlier reform in China. To create more well-rounded students, colleges started recognizing artistic and athletic talent. It's a noble idea, right? But what really happened? Wealthy parents just flooded their kids into expensive violin lessons and figure skating classes, completely boxing out kids who might be more talented but couldn't afford it. Inequality disguised as equality. And you know what? We see the exact same thing play out in the US with holistic admissions. To help disadvantaged students, lots of universities made standardized tests optional, but that just moves the goalposts. Now the focus is on extracurriculars, fancy recommendation letters, and polished personal essays, all things that wealthier families can more easily buy or cultivate for their kids. Again, inequality disguised as equality. Well, what about charter schools? The idea was to give kids in poor areas a better alternative. But the reality is often that the wealthier, more engaged families pull their kids out and into charters, which drains resources and talent from the public schools, leaving the most vulnerable students even further behind. It's the same pattern again and again. And this gets to the absolute core of why the crackdown in China failed. The government attacked the symptom, which was the supply of tutors, but it completely ignored the disease. And the disease is the intense, deep-seated societal demand from parents who will do literally anything to give their child an edge. Which brings us to a final, pretty uncomfortable question. No government, no matter how powerful, can stop a parent from wanting the best for their child. So if every single well-intentioned education reform, from China's tutoring ban to America's holistic admissions, can ultimately be gamed by the wealthy, then maybe we're asking our schools to do a job they simply can't do. Maybe education isn't the right tool for fixing inequality after all. It's something to think about.